Hey all, welcome to the Gravity Doctors. I'm Dr. Brennan Spiegel. I'm a professor of medicine and public health. I'm a gastroenterologist and the author of the book Pull.
And I'm Dr. Lachlan Kent. I'm a psychology PhD and I do research into the idea of mental gravity, so the connection between physics, the mind, and in particular, mental health.
Between the two of us, we like to call ourselves the Gravity Doctors. We're interested in how this fundamental force of physics affects our mind and our body.
And today we're talking about serotonin. So you probably know serotonin as kind of the happiness chemical. You might also know that it's used for a lot of medications, especially for anxiety, depression, and even gut issues. Brennan, you're a gastroenterologist. So we're going to talk about it from a sort of holistic perspective today and its relationship to gravity, and in particular, a paper that you've just had published on serotonin as a gravity management molecule. Give us the rundown.
Well, you're right. It's a new paper that focuses on thinking about serotonin through the lens of gravity. And, most people, when they think of serotonin, they think of a happiness chemical. It's a neurotransmitter in the brain. It elevates your mood. Another one of those gravitational metaphors, elevate being kind of good and depressed not so good. So if you're depressed, we want to elevate your mood, elevate your serotonin. But most all of the serotonin in your body is not from your brain at all. It actually comes from your gut.
And stays in the body. It's not like it just goes from the gut to the brain.
That's right.
It's going through your body right now.
There's two different serotonin compartments, and they don't really cross over. One is in the brain. It's a much smaller amount of serotonin, and the other is in the gut. And it turns out, in order to make serotonin, you need a few ingredients. The first is you need to have a microbiome. And these are the trillions of organisms that are living inside your intestines.
Your bacteria and everything, yeah.
Yeah, the viruses, bacteria, archaea, fungi. That whole milieu is what we call the microbiome.
Yeah.
Tend to focus a lot on the bacteria in particular. But all of that stuff in there, and we'll get to what we think happened evolutionarily in a second, is necessary to trigger serotonin production. But there's a second ingredient, and that's your diet, tryptophan. So tryptophan is a chemical found in a number of foods. A lot of people think about turkey here in the U.S., especially after Thanksgiving. Might eat a lot of turkey, get kind of sleepy. Turns out melatonin is another byproduct in the serotonin family. Yeah. So there's a number of foods we'll talk about that can help boost serotonin production from tryptophan. And so those are the components necessary to create serotonin. And once serotonin is formed, as you said, it can start to spread all across the body.
And what does it do? What does serotonin actually do? In your book, Pull, you've given a sort of diagram that we can bring up on screen. But for those who are listening, can you give us an idea of what serotonin does in those various parts of the body?
Yeah, right. So for sure, serotonin works in the gut, which is its home base. It is really important for movement or motility. So no matter what position you're in, whether you're upside down, right side up, whether you're in space or whatever altitude you're at, you can move your intestines against the force of gravity through serotonin. But it does a lot more than that. Serotonin jumps on platelets, which are important for you to clot blood. And it turns out platelets are like a ferry that carry serotonin throughout the body, far and wide. And serotonin is really important for priming the pumps and tubes, cardiovascular system. Serotonin is important to help constrict the blood vessels, to keep the pressure up. It's important for the heart to keep beating strong, something called inotropic support, which is a technical term for just the strength of the beating heart. It needs serotonin. Serotonin is important to prime the lymphatic system, the part of your body that helps bring all the waste back up from your extremities up to your heart and back through the body again so that you can get rid of it. It's important, literally, to be able to procreate on this planet. So there's an old myth that in order to be able to have a baby, a woman needs to stay flat after sexual intercourse. No, they do not. You can stand up and move around, and that's in part, we can thank serotonin for that. serotonin helps orchestrate what we call retrograde contractions of the uterus, which means it pushes sperm upwards against gravity towards the ovaries.
Right.
And that too is a consequence of serotonin. It doesn't even end there. Your inner ear, something we've talked about in some other episodes, which is important for balance and alignment, very dependent upon serotonin, to the point where some people who are withdrawing from serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, for depression or anxiety might get very dizzy because the serotonin levels drop in their vestibular nucleus, the part of the brain that's focused on balance, and they can't stand upright. And I can keep going.
Yeah. So how did you were thinking about all of these various functions, and you've essentially boiled them down and said, well, underneath all of this is some relationship with gravity. So how do you characterize that? What do you think serotonin is in sort of the biological evolutionary frame?
Yeah.
Like, is it something that we evolved at a certain point when we needed extra gravity pumps, when we needed to, get onto land, or we needed to stand up as humans? Like, where does it actually come from? What's
Interesting to think of it this way. All organisms have serotonin, by the way. It's not just humans. Plants have serotonin. And even in plants, it looks like serotonin's involved in apical extension towards the sun, the ability of a plant to almost like reach out to the sky.
And that's called gravitropism.
Gravitropism.
Yeah.
Right. And so serotonin's involved in that. I mean, there are other things too. I can't just simplify it's all serotonin. But, if you start looking at what serotonin does across biology, it seems to have this anti-gravity capacity. So that's why I call it a gravity management substance or a gravity management molecule. And so evolutionarily, this may be a little poetic to think of it this way, but our ancestors were floating around in the ocean, and life, we think, sort of may have begun in and around hydrothermal vents, hot, dark, gassy, sulfurous worlds.
Deep sea.
Right, in the deep sea.
Yeah.
And then, unicellular organisms floating around, and gravity wasn't all that important. Eventually, fast forward quite a bit, we have multicellular, larger creatures crawling out of the ocean. You can just sort of imagine it. Boom. What hits them straight up? Gravity. Now you've got to deal with standing up and staying up on your haunches. You can't be flat worm style. You got to get up and move. How did we do that? Well, the pumps and tubes started to develop in a way that allowed us to move and push fluid up, but we needed serotonin for that.
Yeah.
And it turned out we had our own hot, dark, sulfurous, gassy world, very much like a hydrothermal vent, and that's the gut.
Right, the sulfur. Yep, okay.
So we made like an evolutionary bargain.
Yeah.
We said, okay, we're going to give these bacteria a very comfortable home in the form of this dark, sulfuric, hydrothermal kind of place. And we're going to give them mobility. We're going to move them all across the planet, but they're going to give us the ability to move them across the planet because they gave us the gift of serotonin.
Symbiotic. Yeah.
Totally symbiotic, right?
So there you go. So it's a evolutionary, that's in the poetic terms, like a priming molecule that we drew upon in sort of symbiosis with the microbiome in order to gradually elevate ourselves from the ocean to outer space. Like, are we getting too poetic there that we're going up? We're gradually ascending against the gravitational field. Humans have evolved from low to high, from on our fours to standing up. Is this something that we need? Astronauts are going to have to deal a lot with well-being and mood. Like, space is a very stressful environment. So we're going to need to find ways to help them manage their serotonin levels in kind of the opposite way. They've lost contact with gravity. They're floating around weightless. So now we've got to find a different way to balance their serotonin levels out. So where do you see this idea heading? What sort of practical, either research or practical self-care, practical therapeutic interventions can you see coming from this idea?
Yeah, well, let's talk therapeutics, but just want to backtrack for 1 second on this idea of moving into space and moving up in altitude, because we know that when you move up into higher altitudes, it changes the microbiome. It very quickly, actually, because by the way, those bugs also evolved with us mainly on sea level, and so they change like we change when we go up into the upper atmosphere. Serotonin biology begins to change in the upper atmosphere, and it clearly looks like astronauts really struggle with their microbiome and with serotonin in microgravity orbit. And so that relationship between our place on the planet, our relationship to Earth and its pull, our microbiome, and our inner pumps and tubes in relation to serotonin is this like completely new frontier of thinking. And so, what does it mean clinically? Well, diet is something that we definitely can modify. We can try to eat tryptophan-rich foods. And so I call these the Stack 10, STACKTEN. In a book poll that I wrote, I talk about the Stack 10 diet. And so, these are foods like seeds and avocado and tofu and turkey. We can go on and on.
Yep.
Chickpeas, that's the C. Tempeh, and we'll put it in the show notes so you can see the full Stack 10 diet.
Why is it Stack 10? Are there 10 different food
So there's
groups?
10 different foods.
Yeah, okay, right.
And it just sounds simple to say Stack 10. And it turns out STACKTEN spells out Stack 10. And those are the 10 foods that spell that out. So we'll put it in the show notes because I'm actually having trouble remembering the exact order as we talk right now.
So for people who are maybe, they're experiencing maybe GI, gastrointestinal issues or mood, anxiety disorders, and they're maybe on serotonin medications, do you have any advice for them? Like, is there a way of looking at their conditions or their medications slightly differently so they can, institute self-care around it to, maximize therapeutic benefit?
Absolutely. I mean, ideally, by the way, I'm hearing a bird chirping, which it must have some boost of serotonin itself right now because it seems to feel really good out there.
Yeah.
And birds have serotonin too, you know? Yeah. And so the birds outside, getting outside and sunlight and, exercise, these are all activities that can help boost serotonin in the body naturally. Obviously, you need to have some tryptophan, which is the substrate to create the serotonin, but also modifying the microbiome itself. And there are various diets to do that. There's something called a low FODMAP diet for people who have a lot of bloating and discomfort, where you can have low, fermentable sugars and avoid some of these sugars that can lead to certain bacteria growing too quickly that can throw off the balance, which in turn throws serotonin balance off. So there's a lot to be said about working with a dietitian who's familiar with these diets and thinking about natural ways to boost your serotonin. Exercise, as we said, sunlight, diet, all these sorts of activities can jointly help boost your gravity resilience by changing the serotonin biology in your body.
So what we're offering here is a bit of biological and sort of health literacy, a way of thinking about, multiple health conditions, but also positive mental health. What makes you feel good? What makes you flourish? What makes you feel, that you've got energy, you've got enough energy for what you want to do. So what we're giving you is a way of thinking about, a chemical that's there all the time that you probably only thought was in the brain, but is actually permeating the whole body.
Have you seen the movie Dune or read the book?
I haven't read the book, but I've seen the film.
Okay. Well, this is one of my favorite books of all time. And this seems like a non sequitur, but I'm going to connect it.
Yep.
It's one of the greatest stories, science fiction stories of all time. And so in the movie, in the story Dune, there's this planet Arrakis. And there are these giant worms that live underground in the darkness of the underworld. And they produce spice. And spice is this almost like psychoactive chemical that causes people to have hallucinations, almost like a psychedelic. And by the way, psychedelics deploy serotonin like crazy in your brain and make you feel high, right?
Yeah.
And so people would get high off the spice.
Go on a trip.
And they'd go, go on a trip, literally go up into the... So anyway, what I'm getting at is in Dune, the worms make the spice. And you can almost understand all of Dune by understanding the power of feeling high.
Yeah.
Because everyone's fighting for this spice.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but one day I realized, like, what if I just substitute the word serotonin for spice in the story of Dune?
Yeah.
Because we also have these worm-like creatures that are in this dark underworld that are creating this substance. Instead of spice, it's serotonin. And it too makes us feel kind of high.
Yeah.
And it also is the source of a tremendous amount of power and also stress in our civilization. Yeah. The fight for serotonin is essentially the fight for power. And we can almost understand all of human civilization and politics and psychology if we just reread that story, substituting serotonin for spice. I think that's going to be my next book. I'm going to call it The Spice of Life.
It's an allegory for serotonin.
It is. I'm sure of it.
So you can probably tell I'm Australian. In Australia, psychedelic therapy has been legalized for therapeutic approaches to anxiety and depression.
Right.
Things like death anxiety. It's been shown to be really effective.
So I wish we would do that here too.
Yeah, I think it's a very
the US.
It's obviously a very powerful substance.
Yes.
And it's a serotonergic agonist.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot in the future that needs to be explored, and maybe gravity is a way of organizing that exploration. That's the landscape that we're exploring through.
I mean, it's an absolute landscape. It's about feeling high, but not high necessarily from drugs always. It's about feeling elevated, elevation.
Yeah.
And this is why we use SSRIs. They're mood elevators. But we also know, and you know better than I even, that SSRIs are effective, but not that effective.
Yep.
They're not that effective.
Lots of side effects.
They have a lot of side effects, including dizziness, as I said, sometimes withdrawing causes problems, lots of other issues.
GI issues.
And why? Because serotonin and gastrointestinal issues are so tightly linked to one another. If you throw off serotonin levels, it changes the motility of the gut. You can get too much serotonin, which can cause diarrhea. Chronic pain, too, is potentially in part due to changes in serotonin, because serotonin primes the muscles and nerves, and that's a whole other discussion. And so, naturally boosting serotonin is about elevating body and mind together. It's a very powerful way of recasting a lot of the things that we do and the medications that we take, and psychedelics as well.
I think we can wrap it up there, Brennan. Thank you, because people can go and read your paper if they want to look at the deep details, or they can get your book Pull coming out in early October if they'd like to learn more.
Great discussion. If you liked that episode, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about the Gravity Doctors. You can also follow us on social media. Check out the book Pull, and you can also check out our show notes for tips and links to some of our scientific articles. You can follow us online at thegravitydoctors.com. You can follow me, BrennanSpiegelMD.com, and Dr. Lachlan at lachlankent.au.